Welcome back to video 4. We're here today to talk about FIAs and taxes with Bruce Mason of MFP. Bruce, in terms of MFP's ability to assist our investors with ongoing tax disclosures and reporting the profits that they earn from this strategy, what are you able to assist with?
Yeah, I think thanks for that, B. I think that's probably one of the great tie-ins and why the relationship has worked well, is there is an ability to pick up some extra work. It's certainly not a punt out the gates, but we are able to help. So we do full tax services from individuals needing to get compliant and get their taxes in, to people shifting money offshore, to businesses handling their taxes and tax affairs. We can certainly help there.
Thank you, Bruce. So that gives us a lot of the theory. Let me maybe just take a moment to share a bit of how this looks on my statements. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen here. This was my Investec statement, and you see here that there was 200,000 Rand, and then I sent out 199, and I incurred a 450 Investec outward transfer fee. As you see here, foreign exchange, the payment goes out. When that payment goes out, as Bruce mentioned, that payment is a payment from a Rand account to my New York dollar account. That is a BOP reportable transaction, and it comes off my SDA, my single discretionary allowance, up until the first 1 million. So every time I send money out, if I'm sending 200 out, it's going to be 200, 400, 600, all counted off that 1 million, which means if I didn't have any capital appreciation, I would just be able to make 5 investments offshore with my 200,000 Rand equity. That 200,000 is traded in our arbitrage strategy and is brought back into South Africa through digital assets, which are not seen on the BOP system. So what then happens is you don't get the BOP credit for that import of value back into South Africa, which is why your SDA gets used up quite quickly, your single discretionary allowance. Some investors are then concerned that why would I make this investment just to make an investment for 1 week? Now, while that is true, that the investment is a short SDA investment, if you're making the average return as at now, 31 August 2020, that average return is 8% per week. An investor should look at it as, where can I earn 8% anyway in a short period of time? And once you've made that 8% in a week, you then still have your investing account open, which you can manage and use for other purposes, or you can choose to do the FIA and make hopefully 8% per week for 10 more weeks under your FIA. So what will happen is when you are completing your forms, there'll be some very important forms that you need to properly sign off. The one is this Investec form, which is the Forex Exchange Declaration and Indemnity. When making your offshore payments, you will tick single discretionary allowance for the first part. Once you've capped that out, then you will tick your FIA, and you'll put your FIA PIN here, because you will have a tax clearance certificate, which hopefully Bruce will help you to get very fast. I mean, the fastest I've seen Bruce's team do it is 3 days. The longest was 21 days during lockdown, when SARS took the maximum 21 days, which they're allowed to take. The second form in your onboarding pack, which will involve this, is the Stewards form, which is where you authorize stewards to use a portion of your 10 million FIA or a portion of your 1 million FIA, and you would just tick whichever one it is, fill in the correct numbers here. And it's very important that you do this diligently, because if you breach these allowances, it's actually illegal. I mean, it's an offense. These are SARB regulations as to how much you can pay offshore. Viloshny keeps a record of the SDA and FIA usage per investor, and ensures that it is within the amount that the investor has declared for us to utilize for this investment. Viloshny, can you just let us know how you would update investors of the process?
Once the investors cap is reached, we then send out an introductory email to MFP, introducing the client to MFP, our partner.
Thank you very much, Vili. Okay, so at the end of your allowances, when you're near your cap, you will be informed and then connected with MFP, and it will be your election as to if you would like to continue with that. So just to give it this sounds like a lot of admin on this call, and I mean nothing is ever easy. Our returns are lucrative at 8% per week as at end of August, but yes, there's a lot of grunt work that comes with that. There's a lot of admin which Bruce and his team assists with, and our team have systems in the background to protect the investor. What has gone wrong in the past is an investor has particularly accidentally paid a Netflix or bought something on Amazon on the credit card and we're not aware of it, and then that put them above allowance. So we would recommend that you do not allocate your full 1 million SDA, but rather put a buffer of 20 or 50,000 Rand, depending how much you think you could have spent offshore, just as a caution in parting. And just to whet the appetite a little bit, I'll just try to share one more screen with you. This is an example of the scenarios we've had of investors who have traded an average of a 1% cycle, a 2% cycle, or a 3% cycle over an SDA and an FIA of 10 million. And what has historically happened in the past, in a scenario where an investor is on a 1% cycle, that investor makes 85,000 Rand from an initial investment of 200,000 Rand over the life of the investment, which would be within a year, at a 2%, which is the average that's being achieved per cycle, whilst the average on the fact sheet is 8% per week. The average per cycle, which may be more than one cycle per week, is 2%. And in that scenario, an investor is investing 200,000 Rand and gains a return of 195. And in the best case scenario we've seen in the past, an investor has put in 200,000 and made a gain of 305 over and above that initial investment. So these are not promises or commitments. None of this is guaranteed. This is just based on historic performance and to give you a bit of an incentive to do the paperwork to fill out all these forms. Yeah. So Bruce, team, thank you very much.
If I can maybe just chip in there, I think, I mean, the returns are incredible. And I think the key to being able to deliver those returns is to try and trade as much as you can uninterrupted. And the biggest disruptor to your ability to trade is your FIA process. That's the single thing that really causes you to stop-start. So I think probably two little bits maybe from my side in terms of guidance. The one is you don't necessarily have to wait for the email from Viloshni to give people an indication that you're going to continue with your FIA after your SDA is done. So because the Stewards platform is so fast in terms of being able to trade out, you're literally looking at 2 weeks max before you've hit your 1 million SDA. Now, while I accept that it's sometimes, you know, it's a bit scary to put the initial 150 or 200,000 Rand at risk, call it, because you don't understand the actual underlying investment. Maybe once your first 3 or 4 trades are through and you see what it does, turn your attention to whether you think you're going to continue with the trading or not. Because the most frustrating thing is you get to the end of your 1 million, and then you've got potentially a 2 to 3 week wait before you actually get to carry on. And then the same.
The biggest complaint we get from investors.
The single biggest complaint.
They've made a great return last week, and now they're stuck waiting for the FIA, and they're watching the other investors earn 8%. And
100%. And then people get emotional as well, quite obviously. You know, when you've got an opportunity right there in front of you, and then you can't access it. Then things like the amount of time SARS might be taking to turn an application around, the fact that we're asking all sorts of things that people weren't necessarily aware of. Oh gosh, I've got to put together a statement of assets and liabilities. These are all little things that creep in and cause a bit of frustration for the guys. So yeah, so my steer is, if you're happy with the first few trades, drop V a mail and say, please, can I get my FIA process kicked off? And similarly, you don't necessarily have to wait. Let's say you applied for a 2 million rand FIA. You don't necessarily have to wait until the full 2 million is exhausted before you start your next application. We have guys who, after 2 or 3 trades, at least cash is flown in and out of an account, because that's one of the big things SARS checks. Start your next application. In that way, you try and get as long a cycle of actually trading as you can. And then suddenly the maths that B's put in front of you actually can make even more sense, because whilst you might have used the base of 200,000 Rand to generate the 300,000 Rand return, if you can generate that in 6 months and not 12 months, obviously then you're free to redeploy your capital elsewhere for the balance of the year. I mean, there's probably other things. This call is too short for it, Bilal, but guys coming through the gate, get to the end, possibly the husband's a half flyer, earns a decent income, uses his 10 million, and now he thinks, well, that's us done for the year. There are ways and means, for example, to access his wife's FIA if they're married, for example. So probably a bit more for another day, but yeah, just a few hints, tips and tricks from my side.
Yes, and I mean, there's also the great trick of capital transfers where people can sell the assets to make a bit of money, to show a bit of liquidity. So I mean, there's always a way to do things in a legal manner that keeps SARS and SARB happy and play within the rules and still get a return. So,
absolutely. That's always the end game, is we're free as taxpayers in South Africa to structure how we see fit. So we'll always take full advantage of that, but always in the right space. We won't put anybody at risk in terms of those things that we'll advise. Possibly one other thing, B, you raised that's just piqued my interest now, is around the tax consequences of these investments, which we haven't covered off. But because the money is not staying in a fund from start to finish, my initial view of this would be that it would be revenue in nature. It would be up to an individual to argue differently, because the capital versus revenue argument always comes down to intention in terms of our tax act. But I would find it quite difficult to defend someone saying that it was always my intention to stay in when the money is going in and coming out every time. So that would be the other thing. If people are going to use us as a provider, again, we're a recommendation, it's not compulsory, but that is the way we would be wanting to steer people to report their taxes as well, is to declare it as revenue, deduct the directly deductible costs, and then possibly to use other tax planning tools like venture capital companies or RAs to claim the deduction of the proceeds.
Great. Yeah, I mean, we recommend that all investors pay the full tax on these investments and that they declare it in their taxable income, as Bruce highlights. Just in closing out, any comments from myself, Viloshini or Graham? We're not tax practitioners. Bruce is qualified to give this guidance. So our goal is to give you the investment performance and report to you on that performance. So any direct questions that you have on that, we'll put MFP's details in the link to the video, and you're most welcome to contact them directly if you have any questions on your tax affairs or anything further you'd like to learn from MFP.
Great, and I think that Bruce and his team provide a great service that complements the investment strategy. And I think in many ways, Stewards has done very well to group professionals in various fields to provide their services to assist clients. So we're really trying to streamline the process and bring the right skill set in. And yeah, it just makes sense to make use of Bruce and his team to attempt to fully access this opportunity.
Exactly.
Thanks, Graham.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time, and see you on the next video.
Yeah, cheers, everybody.
No.